Alright, finally here everybody. Finally gonna be talking about the last row of this entire roster. And also the other three. The other three on the bottoms as to not create 8 episodes. It'll be a lot better to explain all of these because it's just I think this is probably gonna be the most fun road that I've had in this entire roster. And looking at the lineup we have here, it's gonna be a very good episode because, well, this is probably gonna be the last episode of this series before I go back to my usual gameplay sort of a schedule. Anyways, let's go on and talk about the first character in in the last row, as well as the other three, I suppose. Pico. Okay, so this is the last Newgrounds character that I did a moveset for, and honestly, it took me a very long time to realize I could have done one about Newgrounds mascot. Okay, well, technically Newgrounds secondary mascot, Newgrounds actual mascot is the Tank Man. But if anyone else is actually just as connected to Newgrounds as anybody else, it'd be Pico. And Pico is probably the best place to start, considering that he had one game in 1999. That was the year I was born, by the way. It called Pico School, which is I'm pretty sure there were rumors about it being based on an actual incident that occurred. I'm not going to go into that. I'm actually just going to go into the fact that I created a moveset for this guy, and he has since regained some popularity, especially as the secondary Newgrounds mascot, and appearing in Friday Night Funkin' alongside one of the newest members of the Newgrounds family, Boyfriend, and his girlfriend. And I also really like the lore implications that Pico here is actually Boyfriend's ex-boyfriend. That's actually very funny. I love it. It's just very cool and progressive and awesome. I love it. Although if you guys are probably asking, my favorite version of Pico is the soft version of Pico from Friday Night Funkin' Soft. Some of you have probably seen me play that a while back, and FNF Soft has voice acting now, which I'm very happy for. But I'm getting off track. So the Smash Bros. Moveset I made for Pico, of course, I have to reference quite a few things. In fact, the basic design that I used is the new design that he has nowadays, or I should say, his current design. Alongside the actual ideas that he had his taunts include Nene and Darnell in some way, as well as having one victory screen that includes Nene and Darnell in some way, since all three of them are an assassination team. And and I think I also like to have an idea for boxing ring nicknames. Oh, I think I probably should have mentioned this a long while ago. So of course Pico's basic attacks would have to include his guns as well, his twin Uzis, I should say. His smash attacks would obviously include them, like his up smash, side smash, and his down smash would of course be that breakdance shooting that he does in that one Pico animation that we all know. Although honestly, we've only seen that breakdance at least once. It was honestly very memorable, and it just makes sense for his character. Not to mention, I would include some aesthetic things about it that, well, honestly, I don't really know, to be honest. I kind of do like the idea of having him as a character, and having him on the roster just feels right, especially since Newgrounds was a big part of my childhood, especially in the 2013, 2015 eras. Let's be real. If the internet would not be the same without Pico, and I don't think the Pico would be the same without the internet itself. Considering that he was then included as the first Newgrounds character in Friday Night Funkin' that was not original to the series. He was first appeared in Pico's school, and then has since appeared in multiple animations in the lifetime of his existence. From being hunted by a psychopathic friend Nene to being friends with the pyromaniac Darnell, and honestly having his own weekend as a playable character for once in Friday Night Funkin', and hell, he even got his own remixes to boot. But what makes Pico special is that he even has his own holiday in Newgrounds called Pico Day, an entire day dedicated to just Pico stuff, and I think that's very cool. And also, you're probably wondering where the art I found here came from. This art here is actually from a Pico mod for Framemakers, another platform fighter that is similar to Smash Bros, but just different enough to make it as its own thing. Heck, that game even has Commander Video and Octodad as playable characters. I'm sure we can fit Pico somewhere there as a mod, right? But anyways, Pico's moveset in Smash would be very interesting, and I of course think his final Smash should be that one scene where he shoots a rope that releases a bus that hits a bunch of Uber kids, but instead of Uber kids, it's the opponent that gets hit by the stationary bus that is just rolling down a hill at Mach 2. And honestly, it makes sense for a moveset like this, and I really would like to see something like that happen. Okay, honestly, I really should put a counter on screen for how many times I've said like throughout that entire segment, but no, I don't think I will. I'm a bit too lazy to do that. But what I'm not lazy on doing is Smash Bros. Color palettes, and honestly, I think Pico was probably one of the easiest characters to actually draw palettes for because he's easy to draw and and actually has a pretty iconic design that no one could ever mistake. Like, it doesn't matter who you are. If you see a kid with orange hair, green clothes, you're gonna recognize him. It's Pico, the guy with the, aka the guy with two Uzis, aka the guy who always makes fun of anyone, no matter gender, race, or anything. But he at least tries to keep it civil. And speaking of which, here are all the palettes that I created for Pico if he were in Super Smash Bros. And honestly, I think I did a pretty good job with it. You got your references like Nene and Darnell and Cassandra, but you also have references to other characters like the Uber Kid, Alucard, and of course his super tall rival Piconio, which I think that's his official name. I don't remember what it was. It's mostly a fan name. And how could I forget to make a reference to his ex-boyfriend as his last alt? It just would be a very big injustice if I didn't include that part of his lore because, well, it feels honestly kind of deserving. Mostly because he just has to have a boyfriend alt. If he didn't, then I probably would be burned at the stake. And looking back on it, I don't think I would change his moveset at all that much. I probably have to include some other references here and there in his taunts and victory animations, and of course his victory theme has to be the Newgrounds theme song because yes, Newgrounds actually has a theme song now. It's been many years. I'm really glad that it does. Though honestly, now that I look at Pico, I think I could have drawn him a little bit better, but this is as good as I can get with him, so y'all are just gonna have to deal with that. Siegfried. Okay, so I'm gonna be honest with all of you, I'm not really that big on Soul Calibur. It wasn't really my favorite fighting game, but I did know it existed, and I have played Soul Calibur 5 before. Or at least I think I'm pretty sure. I'm 90% sure that I played Soul Calibur 5. But the only thing that I know about Soul Calibur is just that it's a very long, complicated story for each individual character, but the main plot revolves around this guy, Siegfried. He's basically the main character, and his whole goal is to stop Soul Edge in order to save the entire world. But from what I remember from the lore, the whole lore is that the sword he wields, Soul Calibur, is actually made from the final piece of Soul Edge, and it was made specifically to destroy Soul Edge. Do you ever get those days where someone just creates a weapon that's specifically designed to either badmouth or just hurt you specifically? Yeah, I don't get those days, but I'm pretty sure Soul Edge has gotten those days, as well as Nightmare, a lot. And the only thing I know about Siegfried is just he's the main character. Only thing I know is that good sword versus bad sword, good sword must win, and sometimes they also have crossover characters with Tekken, Star Wars, and Legend of Zelda for some reason. Actually, wait, I don't know why actually Zelda makes a lot of sense considering Link actually uses a sword and a shield. Star Wars makes sense because, well, it doesn't make that much sense to be honest, but they use swords that are futuristic and it's cool. But Tekken? For some reason, Heihachi was a guest character in one of the Soul Calibur games, and I cannot tell you why that is. I don't even know why he was a guest character in the first place. He doesn't even fight with a sword, he uses his fists. But then again, he was a pretty unique and funny addition, so yeah, I suppose. But now back to Siegfried as a Smash fighter, I think he would be a pretty complex character despite his simple design. And yeah, I know, it's another sword fighter, but hey, I promise you, this one is different because this one actually has something unique that is only unique to him. And I had this whole idea where you would have different smash attacks. So if you charge a smash attack a certain amount, you get a different move out of it. also, if, for example, if you charge say his side smash for only a little bit, you get one of those weaker attacks. But if you charge it all the way, you get a combo swing. So to compensate for that, the longer charge smash attacks, while they are combo swings and hit more and deal more damage, will also be slightly slower than the uncharged smash attacks. Think of it like trading away speed for power in a sense. And also had this idea where some of his aerials could be combo swings as well, since Soul Calibur is not just a fighting game, it is a fighting game with swords, other weapons, and it has a combo system, which if you do it right, you could actually zero to death your opponent in that game. And I really love all the options for customization as well, as do think that some of the customization options could be alternate costumes for Siegfried, but I would sort of settle on alternate colors instead. Aside from that, Siegfried would be a very unique fighter, especially since he would be more of a grounded sword fighter rather than one that's good with aerials. And while I'm pretty sure he does have a couple aerial attacks in his home game, I do like to think that he has more better options for anti-airs instead, considering that he's more of an anti-air combo denying character. I probably would see him as a heavyweight character with okay mobility and no other movement options aside from a double jump. And I think that'd be about it. Seeing that Siegfried would be a very classy and heavily utilizes his sword for all of his attacks. And I know does have a few grabs here and there, but his home game only has like one or two grabs, and they're labeled as horizontal and vertical grabs. Whereas vertical grabs for every character send the opponent skyward, horizontal grabs just send them away, which also gives you more hilarious potential to just grab them and then throw them over a cliff. I think I actually did that once when I was playing Soul Calibur 3 on the GameCube stuff for the GameCube on Nintendo Online, and it's actually one of the funniest grabs ever. Like one of Link's grabs is that he just flips over your arm and then hits you with his sword, which can send you over the edge. Siegfried's grabs and throws in his home game are just as interesting, but honestly, if you really think about it, Siegfried's kind of just the Mario of his series. He's the standard guy. He's the first one you pick. He's the guy who always gets everything handed to him. And by everything, I also mean all the trauma as well, because my God, Siegfried has a lot of trauma. He was basically the chosen hero to stop Soul Edge, and also became corrupted by Soul Edge at some point. Honestly, I never really followed the story much, and I haven't made any palettes for this guy yet. I will eventually though. They're not gonna look great because I'm not good at realistic drawings like these 3D renders are, but will probably try my best. But overall, Siegfried would be a very heavy character, very heavy on combos, and has pretty good startups for some of his throws and even his aerials. And I even had this idea where you can cancel a couple of his attacks into each other, but honestly, Soul Calibur is a much more slow-paced game when it comes to its combo system, so there aren't very many cancelable moves in that game. But at least that's from my experience. I'm not a top player of Soul Calibur or anything, but honestly, if I had to pick another entry for Soul Calibur, I probably would have went with Nightmare as well. But anyways, moving on to the next character. Oh, Bobo. Okay, so this is probably the last anime character I did a moveset for. At least I think so. Okay, yeah, no, memory serves me right. This is the last anime character. This is actually the last non-video game character I did. Well, not the last non-video game character. He is the last anime character I did for a moveset for this roster. And making a moveset for Bobobo was kind of tricky because I haven't seen his show in years. Mostly because it only plays on Adult Swim and super early in the morning. Like if I used to play at like 1 or 2 a.m. in the morning, and I would not be up at the time that happened. I would be fast asleep. And don't worry, no, I didn't watch Adult Swim when I was a kid. My parents were far more responsible than that. Now thinking about Bobo and what his moveset would probably be a no-brainer. Of course, he would have to use his signature fighting style, the Fist of the Nosed Hair. Yes, that is an actual fighting style that he uses in his show, and it's absolutely ridiculous. His whole fighting shtick is based on complete randomness. You don't know what this guy's gonna do next, and honestly, I wouldn't be able to predict him if you even told me how to predict him. So I actually had to look up some of his moveset myself, and I'm actually impressed. This guy doesn't really fight with his fist. Well, he does actually fight with his fist. That's a lie. But he does mostly fight with his actual extending nose hairs, and his afro that for some reason can summon other anime characters like Yugi Muto. I don't know why that is. I guess he was biased towards Yu-Gi-Oh or something. But, but now that I look back on it, I really do kind of like the whole idea with a character that fights from a distance using nothing but his nose hair. Well, actually, kind of gross. It makes sense for his character, and he's also got the whole thing when it comes to randomness. And I also really like the idea of having his victory animations include his friend Don Patch in some way. You know, the weird little guy that looks like a sun, but he's not a sun. He's a rock person. I don't really know. I haven't watched the show in years. I don't think it's had any new seasons in years, and I really do want to see more of that Bobo can do. But of course, his final smash would have to be one of his more ultimate attacks that he uses every now and again. I think I even had an idea where whenever he uses his shield, he would actually use his skill known as nose hair barrier, where he forms a giant shield out of his nose hairs, of course. But I think his neutral special should be Nose Hair Festival, but I think that makes more sense as a final smash since it is labeled in the show as his ultimate technique, which is something that he only saves for serious battles. And just so you know, yes, Bobo actually does have some serious battles despite its absolute absurdity. And in all honesty, honestly, I couldn't really fit all of his moves onto his attack onto his moveset or any of his other attacks, but I did have the idea that his side special should include his nose hair sword attack, a barrage attack of some sort, his Bobo beam, which is apparently a wave attack that releases clams, but he's never actually successfully used it at all, which is pretty funny. And, and if I were to give him some form of interesting grab, I think his spinning lock attack would be work for a grab. So essentially, he grabs you with his nose. So essentially, he grabs you with a what was it called? Apparently known as the hurtling Hatenko lock and load in Japanese. He basically would just hold you with his nose hair and spin you around for a pummel. So using the spinning lock would make sense for a grab and pummel attack. A spiky spin. Having Don Patch and a couple of his other friends assist him in throws and other combos would make it a lot more fun. And yes, I do think one of his taunts should have his afro open up and summon just a random anime character for no reason, including Yugi Muto because it'd be funny. And honestly, I don't really know how he keeps all this stuff in that one afro when he doesn't even have a brain. Well, technically he does have a brain, he just has zero thoughts going through it. His whole show is based on randomness. It's essentially an acid trip for those who can't handle the real thing. And I absolutely love it. Though I think I also made a moveset for him if he were in Shonen Jump as well, but that's a completely unrelated and different thing. Though honestly, if Bobo does get into a Shonen Jump game at some point, I would not be against it. I'd be super happy to see how it would work as a character. Marasmus. Hey look, it's the third TF2 character that I did a moveset for in this entire roster. Honestly, I see a lot of people talking about Smash movesets for Heavy, Soldier, Scout, and even gosh darn Pyro, but I never see anyone talking about Marasmus. You know, the one wizard who actually has an assortment of magical spells that make sense for a Smash Bros. Moveset. And honestly, yeah, this actually works. I made the moveset quite a few years ago, and I haven't been able to see it or reclaim it since. But I did get some ideas for color palettes at the very least, but I'll show those off in a bit. So Marasmus as a Smash character would actually be a heavyweight character with floaty jumps. So, because you know he's a wizard and sometimes occasionally a ghost for some reason. But he was killed by Korean mafia. I'm not really surprised. Also, the fact that but I don't think the fact that he owes money to two mafias at the same time is anything to go by, considering that he does have a wide array of attacks and spells that he could use. To which, honestly, I don't really know why he doesn't use them all the time. He could easily escape his debt if he just got rid of the mafia that he was messing with. But but now that I get onto that, his spells would make sense for his moveset. Of course, the final smash would be the Abominomicon because it's one of his strongest attacks in TF2 when you fight him as a boss during that one season that makes Halloween into every TF2 player's Christmas. But the fact that I really want to say is that I believe his whole moveset shouldn't have to rely on just spells and bombs. Of course, I do think that one of his specials should summon one of his many, and I mean many Halloween allies, or I guess enemies. I don't know. It's very rocky with their relationships, but I do believe that he should be able to summon Monoculus or even the horseless headless horseman. Yes, that is the full name of the character. I'm not kidding. I wish I was making that up. And and I think he should also be able to use the same spells that the TF2 mercs are able to use whenever they get a hold of a spell book. You know, like Caputus Crepitus, which is basically just him casting Fireball. I'm not kidding. That's actually what it is. Caputus Crepitus is the Fireball spell. His up special would of course be similar to the soldier's rocket jump, but instead he would actually use the blast jump technique, which by the way is apparently called Amplis Tripudio. I hope I'm pronouncing these right, by the way. Right? Right? One of his regular smash attacks could possibly be Deus Invictus, which is basically swarm of bats. That's then and his down smash could probably have him use Pumpkin Merv, otherwise known as Pactum Diabolus. Again, I really hope I'm pronouncing all these correctly. I did have this idea where whenever he does a dodge roll, he would cast Barpo Invisium, aka just stealth or cloak or whatever. And I also do like the idea of having Shadow Leap as an up special, which is basically just another teleport, and it has two charges. It fires a dark smoke ball that teleports the caster wherever it lands when it comes into contact with the surface. And it also heals the user for 30 health, but I don't think we should carry the heal factor over to Smash. It could just be a simple teleport where it says Impsum Instantarium, which by the way is the spell's name. And of course there are the rare magic spells, which I think makes sense for special attacks. Aside from, you know, regular attacks. But I had this idea where one of his possible final smashes could be Seismella Tremoro, the speech that every TF2 player fears because it is a meteor shower and it's a one-hit KO attack. But it wouldn't really do that in Smash. I also had this idea where there's to be a small chance that whenever Marasmus tried to cast one of his spells, he would accidentally say Paidum Celeris, which by the way is the power up spell. You know, that one spell that shrinks you, turns your head big, and makes you a lot harder to hit. But you're also a bit more uncontrollable, and you die if you don't kill anybody. Which honestly, it would be kind of a bad. But I thought it'd be kind of a bad gimmick, so I ultimately scrapped it. And of course, I wanted to make the palettes stand out as well. So making the color palettes for Marasmus was, to be completely honest, very challenging. It was very hard to work with, but I did have a lot of sources that I could use for all the costume references. And these are all the costumes that I was able to make from Marasmus if he were a character in Smash Brothers. So yes, of course, he has a standard black attire, he has a red and blue alt for the red and blue teams, and then he has this other alt, a purple alt that references the horseless headless horseman, a brown alt that references Monoculus, this other alt that I guess kind of is just a sort of a Halloween witchy color, I don't know. Then there's one that's just an inverse with the blacks and whites switching around. And of course we have an alt based on his appearance when he's a ghost. Or, you know, I guess a level 5 ghost boss. I don't know. But But made these alts, I was actually very proud with how I drew Marasmus. I did not think I was gonna get him right on right then and there, but I did somehow, and I love it. I'm really glad that this came out as well as it did. So I really want to know what do you guys think about these palettes for Marasmus that I made? I worked very hard on these, and TF2 characters are very hard to draw in the first place. So I hope you guys really like these alts that I made. Adeline and Ribbon. Oh hey, look, it's the last duo character that I've done for this roster. Honestly, I'm really proud of how Adeline and Ribbon's moveset came out, because I had a lot of sources that I could actually use for most of their attacks. And by a lot of sources, I mean just Kirby and Kirby Star allies, and that's about it. I mean, of course, I took some inspiration from their boss fights as well, or technically Adeline's boss fight, because Ribbon wasn't really there. So when making the moveset, of course I had to think like Sakurai. What would a Kirby character's moveset be? Probably similar to how they act in the game, right? So of course Adeline and Ribbon together would be a lightweight character with a couple floaty jumps, and well, I'd say 2 jumps regularly and then a 3rd jump because Ribbon can be helping out with her wings, and no other movement options. At least from my standpoint, because I don't really think I've seen any Kirby characters crawl at all. So it would be 3 jumps thanks to Ribbon, and I think they would be more so of an aerial fighter than a ground fighter. I could totally see these guys being absolutely amazing. Or wait, hold on. Oh, Adeline is actually a girl. Huh. Honestly, could have fooled me, but honestly, seeing these 2 girls as fighters in Smash Bros. Would make a lot of sense, especially considering that Sakurai is the creator of the Kirby franchise. So seeing an out of left field character like this, or I guess even GUI potentially, would make a lot of sense. And honestly, I would probably make their moveset very interesting. It probably would be a variation of how they are in Star Allies, because all their moves would come from that game, but also the N64 title and Adeline's first appearance as a boss. When she was first just known as Ado. Or I guess Ado is just a separate character. I don't really know. But despite that, I actually do have some ideas that could be used for a moveset if Adeline were in Smash Brothers. For example, she could have Ado's Painter as a down special, where you press down and B, and then she would paint one of 3 random characters. Krako, which she could ride around and use lightning attacks, and then there's the Ice Dragon, which uses, of course, ice attacks and its own weight. And then there's Wayu. Wayu is a ninja, and he throws throwing stars. He's essentially the fast but very fragile character. And while all three of them do act differently, they all would probably have the exact same HP. So if you hit them enough damage, they'll get destroyed, leaving Adeline kind of defenseless. Well, not completely defenseless. Adeline can still fight back with some reliable coverage, especially from Ribbon, which I'm pretty sure the up special would be Ribbon Flight. And if you press the special attack again, Adeline could probably use a crystal gun to shoot some crystals forward. That's certainly a reference to some absolutely heated trauma. I also had this one idea where Adeline's dash attack could be the same dash attack from Star Allies, where she just feebly waves her paintbrush around in front of her. And honestly, despite it looking pathetic, it would actually be a pretty reliable get off me kind of tool. And I also had this idea with Fairy Dance being a very cute anti-air that's also their neutral air, which I think would be pretty funny to have it as an up B, but honestly it doesn't really fit. I think it fits more as an up as a jump and neutral air attack, so that they could just do a little fairy dance around and hit anyone on both sides. It's a very very reliable move. And I also had this idea where whenever Adeline and Ribbon shields, they would actually use canvas cover as their shield, because it'd be pretty funny. Funny. Oh, and I'm also Alfresco. Alfresco is probably gonna be one of the neutral specials that I would use for Adeline and Ribbon, so that they can summon certain healing items, but they will still be able to heal. Sorry. they'll still be able to summon healing items even if items are turned off. So like I can summon a heart container, but of course that would be that could also be used against them if the opponent is able to catch them. And also I really like that their dash attack is just called Brush Force, like brute force, but with a paintbrush. That's funny. I do have quite a lot of ideas for all their moves, and I absolutely love all of them. And I really wish I could share them with you guys if Amino Apps wasn't dead. But you know, it's dead, it's gone. Who cares at this point? I also had the idea of having Brush Slash as a neutral special as well, or maybe even a side special, kind of. But aside from that, I do like Adeline Ribbon, and I am planning on making some color palettes for them in the future. But overall, I do like them. It'd be a very interesting character to have, which would increase the roster to 4 Kirby characters, I suppose. And please, if Sakurai is planning to make a Smash 6, please put Bandana D as a playable character. It would make a couple of us pretty happy. Speed Runner. So, here's another obscure character that I highly doubt any of you know unless you actually played their game. So, Speedrunner here is actually a pretty interesting character to make a Smash Bros. Moveset for. Especially the whole theory that I had is that with Speedrunner, you'd want to keep moving. Don't stop for any reason. You should always be running around no matter what, because that's basically the whole game is from. In case you guys don't know, Speedrunners is a racing game, a 4-player racing game which you go around a specific map in certain loops and try to take shortcuts to get ahead of your opponents. It also has an elimination system similarly to Smash Brothers, but completely different, as you're constantly running around a looping track until 3 of you are eliminated and 1 is standing victorious. Now, I've seen quite a lot of people play the speedrunners, namely H2O Delirious and Dapags. But aside from them, we don't really get much on this series. I really wish that we could see more speedrunner content, and I really like the idea of having a race constantly until only one person is left standing. Now, usually I want to pick any of the characters, so honestly, picking a speedrunner's characters is kind of the same similar situation to how Sakurai had to pick an ARMS character. Although I didn't actually have any contact with the devs, so I kind of have to choose myself. And honestly, I probably would pick this guy. I don't really know what his name is. I think all the characters' names are just Speedrunner. But when I think of that, I kind of do understand that they all do have individual names, but I don't really recall what those names were. I also had this idea where, yes, I am aware that the speedrunner here does have alternate palettes in his game to differentiate for players, and it can make other palette colors based on other speedrunners. But I think it'd be more sense for all 8 of speedrunners' palettes to just be alternate costumes, or I should say alternate characters, being all the other 8 other speedrunners, or rather 7 other speedrunners that the game has, since all of them basically have the exact same moveset, access to the exact same power-ups, and nobody has a distinct advantage over anybody. And just so you know, yes, I do know about the bonus character Markiplier, having Markiplier as a playable character in the game, but that's more of a bonus thing than a base game thing, so I didn't really count him. And I haven't really made any palettes for this guy yet, even though he'd probably be the simplest one to make palettes for. But because, you know, his whole suit is just one color with a couple of exceptions, and his eyes and his face. But aside from that, that's it. I don't really have anything else to say about the speedrunners. Of course, I did think the idea of having the grappling hook as their up special, with like a tether recovery, or they could use it to grab opponents. And I also had this idea where the grappling hook could also be used as a side special to grab opponents and launch them opposite to the direction that speedrunner is facing, as if he's trying to go that way, and doesn't really want anybody else in his way, I suppose. There are other power-ups like landmines or just dashing into people really hard, but that's about it. I couldn't really think of anything else that I could use, and I've only watched people play speedrunners a few times, but honestly, even with just very little, I was with very little, I was even able to make a moveset for Peppy Van Poodle. Surely I can make a moveset for a person who actually has some things I can use from his games. And to top it all off, the final smash, I think I would just call it Blast Zone. Considering that in speedrunners, if you fall behind too far, you get sent into a blast zone, similar to Smash Brothers. So I'm thinking for a final smash, it could be in a cinematic one where a speedrunner dashes into the enemy gets flung onto a track, starts running to try to outspeed speedrunner, but then speedrunner grabs one of the grappling hooks and sends them backwards into a blast zone of sorts. And no, it wouldn't be an instant KO. It would just be a sort of medium-sized explosion at the end of the cutscene that then launches the foe away from where speedrunner is. And honestly, I kind of like this idea for a Smash Bros. Final Smash. I really wish we had more obscure character representation like this, and it would be pretty fun to see him in a game like Smash Brothers. Rambo. Okay, so this is probably gonna be the last indie game horror character that I do a moveset for. And honestly, I think I did a pretty good job with her moveset. Despite her coming from a game where it's more of a puzzle game than a fighting game. It's a game that mostly relies on puzzles. There's no fighting in it. So it's, in a sense, it's kind of the same boat as Mad Father, Witch's House, Misao, Eve, all those ones. The only difference being the completely obscene and uncanny art style that the game has. It's actually very horrific and with some realistic graphics here and there, but that's about it. See, the whole process of Frambo as a game is that you have to go back and forth between normal reality and the ultra reality, as the game likes to call it, by taking these little red pills called duotine. Oh, right, I should probably mention in this video, do not do drugs, kids. It is bad for you, and do not take any medication that is not specifically prescribed to you. You should always be healthy, always stay smart, and stay in school, okay? Alright, now that the PSA is over, Frambo's whole moveset is actually somewhat based around duotine. And honestly, I did get some pretty good ideas for what some of her early moves could be. One of the ideas I had was, of course, being able to use a sort of, well, think of it like a Dr. Mario neutral special. She would send a sleeping pill forwards, and yes, I mean a sleeping pill. It's an actual sleeping pill. But the actual properties is that it does very little damage and only has a very small chance to make the enemy go to sleep. However, I had this whole gimmick set up where well, of course, it's relying if items are turned on or not. If a food item has to be turned on and she throws a sleeping pill, if that pill hits the food item, it will fuse with it. So anyone who actually eats the food item will not only just recover a teeny bit of health, but they will also be put to sleep. Kind of like how Frambo could actually make the security guard at the mental institute fall asleep just by tricking him to eating I think it was a cinnamon bun. Yeah, it was definitely a cinnamon bun. And I had some ideas for different like final smashes here and there. Well, not really a final smash, but like some of her smash attacks. That was it. Of course, her smash attacks and other attacks, I don't really know, because Frambo herself isn't really one to get into any scrapes or fights, because she's an 11-year-old girl, not a super souped up bounty hunter like Samus. So instead, I actually had this idea where she would fight alongside her trusty cat, Mr. Midnight, a small black cat that Frambo is very near and dear towards. So of course, with some of the aerials and attacks, Mr. Midnight will be the one stepping in to attack, not Frambo. So because Frambo would actually probably be cowarding a little bit, so instead, Mr. Midnight would actually go out to the foe and scratch them. Because I think that would also work for a pretty good unique grab, as to have Mr. Midnight be a disjointed grab where he latches onto any nearby foe and repeatedly scratches at them. For maybe the pummel, I guess. And I think the final smash itself should have something to do with Remor, the main antagonist of Frambo that follows you and stalks you through the entire game, and has been trying to pull you back into madness of some sort. At least that's what I think it should be. But I also had this idea with the up special for Frambo being Palontris, the kind Dr. Bird thing that looks like a giant axolotl to that helps Frambo along her way to get home. And and I think that doing so as an up special makes a lot of sense, considering that he did save her from being just as a reincarnated tree, and turn her into an Etherstonese. I don't really know how it's pronounced. I'm pretty sure it's residents of Ethursta, essentially. Which is one of the places in the Ultra Reality that Frambo goes to. Oh, and speaking of which, that also reminds me of some of the color palettes that I actually did make for Frambo, and I'm very proud on how all these came out because, well, I'm not really that great at drawing hyperrealism like the art here that you see, but I did my best, and here are the ones that I came up with for Frambo. And yes, Mr. Midnight will be included in all of them, and he'll always be a black cat because he's Mr. Midnight. It would be injustice to make him any other color. So, of course, some of these colors are references to other characters and things, but the more mainline ones that you guys would probably recognize is probably the sixth one, the one with the pink bow, is kind of a reference to Little Miss Fortune, the sister game to Frambo, and it's also canonical that both Frambo and Miss Fortune are in the exact same universe, due to the presence of a certain skeletal figure in both games. Now I think the other mainline ones are the last two, which of course has one referencing Frambo as if she were a Kamala, and the last one being a reference to her Thurstonese variation, which I was gonna make into an alternate costume instead, but I don't know, I kind of like just having a recolor be simpler. So what do you guys think about these palettes for Frambo? I really hope to hear some positive reviews about these ones. And in all honesty, I really did enjoy making these colors, alternate colors, and for Smash characters, and I really want to see what you guys would make for alternate costumes as well. So, moving on to the next characters. Peppino Spaghetti. Okay, so this is probably one of the more recent games to actually get onto my Smash Bros. Roster, aside from one later, but we'll talk about that in a second. Peppino is probably one of the more interesting characters to have in Smash Bros. Moveset for, especially since Brawl Fan 01 had did a moveset as well, but I did mine before his, okay? So so Peppino was fair game. Making a moveset from Peppino was actually extremely easy, especially since, even though he only has one game in total, he has a lot of moves to work with, and a lot of different things too. Of course, I do think his Final Smash should be an all-out pummeling attack, but followed by a pile driver into the stage, which honestly makes a lot more sense. But as for his regular attacks, they're all pretty much lined up in the games. Like of course you have your suit of armor for a down special. You got a side special could be a big punch. His dash attack could be his literal dash attack from the games for the games. His other side special could probably be his Mach Run, where he runs super fast and can turn around freely and jump. And hey, I even had the idea where if you do a taunt while dashing, you can actually cancel the Mach Run. And also I had this idea where his taunts also act like a counter. So you can use a taunt to parry an attack, and then Peppino will deliver a counter attack. It's a very simple concept to understand, considering the game that he's from. And since he's also relies on speed, I had this whole idea of a speed meter going near his damage percentage at all times, so that he gets more speed as the match goes on, and he loses speed if he ever takes any damage. And I also had this idea for his up tilt to be that one animation of him slipping a banana peel, then just looking at the camera all deadpan while upside down, and then hitting his head on the ground. Him hitting his head onto the ground is a hitbox, so if anyone gets hit by it, they'll probably be buried. I also wanted to include some form of unique throw, and of course the throws have to be all of his throws that he does in the game. So of course his up throw would be a pile driver suplex. His forward throw could be a golf club, and his other attacks could probably feature some other characters like Brick Brick the Rat. I'm pretty sure it's Brick the Rat and his other friend Gustavo, as as well as Mr. Sticks in some way. I also probably want to include some form of cartoony antics when it comes to him, because well, his whole thing is that he has absurd strength. Literally absurd strength. Basically, it's just a bunch of strength that he gets from just the sheer adrenaline and fear alone. Think like Courage the Cowardly Dog. Yeah, something like that. His fear and anxiety basically gives him immense strength for no reason, and it's funny. He basically is just Wario, but a lot more stressed out and a lot funnier. And I do think that his entrance when he goes into the stage should be him looking at the foe and then releasing his iconic yell, which I'm pretty sure is a yell that's from something else, but who knows. Anyways, having Peppino as a character makes a lot of sense, and I don't think I've made any palettes for him, but I think his home game takes care of those palettes for me, which he would of course have a red, blue, yellow, green, brown, purple, and a pattern alt, all representing the ones from his game. But although I do think it would also make sense to give him ults based on the other characters and bosses you can fight in that game as well, that'd be kind of an injustice. He has palettes already, so why not just use those? and his up special could also be his super. His up special could be his super jump, where he crouches and charges up, then jumps really high. But I also had this idea where after he does the super jump, you press the attack button again, and he does a shoulder charge forward, like he does in his home game. So essentially, his whole thing is that he's a speedy character who's also kind of a middle heavyweight in a sense. So he's pretty hard to launch, but he's also very fast and uncontrollable. So you're gonna have to be sure you know what you're doing before you pick Peppino as your character. Iggy Maxwell. Okay, so this is awkward. We're going from one awkward guy to another, and this one makes a lot less sense than the other one, to be honest. I honestly don't know how I made a moveset for this guy, but somehow my insane brain did it. And I'm pretty sure I remember it being very funny as a moveset. So, I actually had this idea where Iggy himself would actually be more of an, well, aside from being an awkward guy, he would be a very awkward fighter in a sense, because all of his attacks wouldn't actually be attacks. They would more so just be incidents that just happened to him. Poor guy. He doesn't deserve all this. But I also had this idea where I had to include some of his friends in his moveset as well. But I'll get to that in a second. So Iggy's normal attacks would probably be very weak and pathetic in a sense, considering, well, he's just an average guy who does computer work for other people, as well as freelancing his own thing. He also likes working on game development and is just genuinely an awkward guy. If any of you have actually watched my Let's Play of Our Wonderland and all of its side games that Carrot has made, then you probably know exactly where I'm gonna go with here. But aside from that, I do think a lot of his regular attacks would be kind of pathetic, weak, and, just awkward. Except for maybe his smash attacks. With his smash attacks, I had this idea where he would be avoiding certain enemies. Like his side smash, he would be avoiding a rabbit guard coming at him with a spear, and his down smash could have him avoid those little weird tomato head things. Yes, those little creatures from Our Wonderland that we meet in the forest that try to eat our flesh off. And I also had this idea where his down smash would be him freaking out because of a giant tongue hitting the spot in front of him. Which, by the way, if you do get hit by this tongue, you would be buried. So yeah, pretty sure anything that massive could bury an opponent. And as for the aerials, they're really nothing special. Just a few pushes and shoves here and there. And of course the grabs and throws would be pretty interesting because I think instead of grabbing the foe and hurting them, he would actually grab the foe and shake them to their senses, and him shaking the foe is the pummel. And oh, I probably should also mention a bit of trivia before I go on. This is actually the only visual novel character to be on this roster. Out of all the characters that you see on this roster here, Iggy Maxwell is the only character to come from an actual visual novel. So I had to get extremely creative with his moveset. and creative I did get because it was actually very fun to make the moveset. So of course, most of his attacks will feel like more like incidents or just accidents. In other words, he's an incidental fighter rather than an actual participant. And as for the special attacks, well, I actually had to take inspiration from a different Our Wonderland game. The very funny side game, Our Fantastic Wonderland, which is basically a game about the OW cast having a small bit of a Dungeons and Dragons night. Essentially, they play D&D, and all of Iggy's special attacks would include a D&D variation of their characters of some sort. So I had this idea. So the idea that I had was that the neutral special. I'm pretty sure the neutral special would be utilizing Buxley, aka Bucks. But Bucks' D&D variant has an axe, so I had this idea where Bucks would have this whole Buxley would have this whole tornado move that happens in front of Iggy, all while he just falls flat on his butt, and it would go forward pretty slowly, but it hits with a lot of power, and I think that's about it. As for the other ones, the side special would of course have Orlum be there as the thief class and doing a simple slash attack, similarly to how Weavile worked in Super Smash Bros. Brawl. The up special would of course be Genzo lifting Iggy and throwing him upwards with his apparently insane strength, but honestly Genzo isn't all that strong. He is pretty strong though. He's a very tough guy, but it's just that Iggy is so frail and light that I'm pretty sure he'd be panicking after getting launched like that. Genzo is always there to pick Iggy up when he feels down, and in this sense, he would do that, quite literally. Honestly, I'm gonna say this: if Carrot Patch is watching this video, please, for God's sakes, I wouldn't mind if you drew all these moveset ideas for Iggy. Oh, and I should probably mention the down special. The down special would actually feature Gidget's D&D character, Gent. I'm pretty sure that's how you pronounce it. It's either Gent or Gent, I don't know. It has an H in it, so it's kind of a weird pronunciation. But the down special would, of course, I would call it the Gent parry. Essentially, it's a counterattack. So you attack Gent, and he parries and counterattacks you. Or is it they? I'm pretty sure it's them, considering Gidget is non-binary in the official game, so it makes sense. So it makes sense that Gent would be 2. Anyways, having the Fantastic Wonderland for the upside down and neutral specials just makes a lot of sense because, well, they're still Iggy's friends in a way, and heck, our Fantastic Wonderland was even given a callback in the original Our Wonderland, which is really nice touch. I like it. As for the Final Smash, a Final Smash that I had to think of was very intuitive, to say the least, but also very inspirational because it's just a summary of Our Wonderland in a sense. I had this whole idea where Iggy's Final Smash would have him hold up a small wishing stone, and the small wishing stone is actually from our Fantastic Wonderland, the D&D session that I mentioned earlier, and it would release a flash of light. From there, the opponent would get sucked into Wonderland, the place that Iggy and Genzo go to in the original game. At that point, the character would be the opponent, the victim, the one that gets caught in the Final Smash, would be mobbed by both Gidget's fans and Orlum's bunny guards until from the shadows after the trampling, Buxley comes out with an axe and swings it to end the cutscene, thus doing quite a lot of damage and launching the foe. And if they happen to be over 150% when the Final Smash ends, well, let's just say they didn't really survive the loop in this Wonderland. Now for the other stuff, for Iggy's entrance and taunts, I thought it'd be pretty funny to have his entrance be him falling from a great height and landing on a pile of plushies, just like he does in the original games. At least we do see that in the original games, because we even see that in the remaster. And also, yeah, the game got remastered. I was playing that for a while, but the remaster hasn't really been finished yet, so... Anyways, going back to the taunts, all of Iggy's taunts would just have... One of him would just have him awkwardly looking around, while another one probably be one of those tomato guys trying to get a bite of him, but him just dodging at the last second. And as for the color palettes, I actually had a lot of fun coming up with color palettes. I've actually showed them to the dev himself, and he really loved all the Iggy palettes I came up with. Yeah, despite Iggy being an awkward guy, he's actually a pretty nice dude in general, and especially if you actually get to know him. And also for him specifically, I actually came up with 9 alternate palettes that he could have in Smash Brothers. Well, of course, the first 8 are his main ones. I just made the last one as sort of a bonus. So, so these are all the palettes that I created for Iggy Maxwell if he were in Smash, and I do genuinely like these ones. Of course, all of them are basically have recolors of his hair and stuff, but it's the last 2 that I'm actually super proud of. The first one is of course his default, followed by one that references Genzo, then Orlum, then Gidget. I think it's weird that Orlum and Gidget have pretty similar colors when it comes to their jackets. But when it comes to their jackets, it's just slightly different. Then we have a reference to Bucks, the absolute tank of a friend that she is. Then we have a reference to Bucks' husband, Hooner, and the last 2 are just alternate costumes for Iggy. First one being his attire when he is crowned King of Wonderland alongside Orlum, and the last one being his white mage getup from our fantastic Wonderland, which funny enough is actually a reference to White Mage from Final Fantasy. And to top it all off, the last one is an alt based off Jerry, the one rabbit guard that gets so underpaid and underwhelmed that I kind of feel bad for the guy. But seriously, let me know what you guys think about these Iggy palettes. I've worked super hard on them. He was super fun to make alts for. If I were to make more alts for him, I would, but I have to sort of restrain myself. So to keep it in mind, the first 8 that you see from the top and bottom ones are the 8 alts I think he should have in Smash Brothers. But I did make a bonus Jerry alt just in case, sort of as of a what if scenario. Emerald. Hey, look at that. It's the last Sonic character that I worked on for this roster. Honestly, I was really proud when it came to Emerald because since Emerald is the character that the player usually plays as in Sonic Battle, at least for the story, Emerald has a lot of moveset potential. Considering that he is a character that copies other characters' moves, similarly to how Metal Sonic does, but Emerald does it in a more metallic sense. Since he can't shapeshift like Metal Sonic, he has to just live with just being able to do certain specific moves. So he's able to copy other characters' moves, like Sonic's Axe Kick, Shadow's Chaos Spear, Rouge's Bat Bombs. You know, if you played Sonic Battle, then you probably know what I'm talking about. Emerald has the ability to copy other characters' moves, and so I had to be able to streamline some of those moves into just different specials. And I also had the idea where Emerald's down special could potentially be one where he actually switches up his other 3 specials. So essentially he has a customizable moveset in one moveset. And he would have technically 3 up specials, 3 neutral specials, and 3 side specials, all of which are interchangeable during a match. And no, you can't pick them before the match, it has to be during it. But aside from that, I really do like the idea of having a unique robot fighter, since the only robot fighters we have are Mega Man and Rob, and that's it. Those are the only robot fighters we have in Smash Brothers. Emerald would be a very unique case considering the game it's from, and all the capabilities that he has. And it has so many possible moveset options in that game, you have no idea. So essentially, it's like an infinite amount of moves. But in Smash Bros, I'd have to somehow simplify that and make it work as a streamlined moveset, and it somehow totally works. Aside from that, I do think that some of Emerald's taunts would be pretty static and imposing, especially given the robot that he is. Emerald did make an appearance in Sonic X, and was actually really close friends with Cream the Rabbit before she had to undoubtedly boot him into the ocean. Because Sonic Battle's story, it was honestly a bit deeper than what you may think. Aside from that, I also had some ideas for different costumes and colors. Of course, I think some of Emerald's colors could reference the other E-series robots, especially Omega, but I think the best reference could have him be even black, yellow, and white as a reference to Gemerald. Basically Emerald, but upgraded, and kind of similar, but different. Emerald is basically one of the more unique fighters that I made a moveset for because he had so many moves to work with. So I had the down special be one where he can change his movesets at will in any sense of the word. So essentially he has three different up specials, three different side specials, and three different neutral specials, all of which function differently and serve different purposes. So you have to basically adapt yourself to the situation at hand, whether it be camping a foe from afar, getting up close and personal, or keeping them off a ledge. And to top it all off, I really wish we had more robot fighters. Oh, as for his Final Smash, I don't really know. I think that was the only option that I actually had that kind of stumped me. What would Emerald's Final Smash be if he's a character that can copy all other moves? Well, honestly, I don't really know. I think it would be some sort of combo finish attack for a Final Smash, but I think that'd be a bit of a lazy cop out. I don't know. What do you guys think his Final Smash should be? Let me know what you think. And anyways, for the last character of this row, we finally get to Whammy! Okay, this is a very jarring pick. I know it's kind of a weird roster already, and Whammy just sort of makes it weirder. So, for those of you who don't know, there used to be a game show that existed and still exists in some way called Whammy Press Your Luck. Or just Whammy if you watch the classic version. Or, wait, no, actually it's just called Press Your Luck in the classic version. Whammy was the new name. So essentially, the Whammy here was the mascot of that game show series. And actually, I think he's the only character in my roster to come from a game show rather than a cartoon, anime, or manga. And I really do like the idea of having a wacky character such as this in a Smash Bros. Style. Because he has a lot of things to work with. First and foremost, his basic attacks would of course be other things that he does basically as the Whammy. The whole point of the Whammies in Impress Your Luck was just to take away your money, in no matter what sense they do it in. It doesn't matter how they do it or when they do it, it's just very funny, because that's just how they are. It's a comedic mascot with a bunch of fun value, and you can do any sort of random things you want with them. I always had a dog for his side tilt or down tilt he used a mallet to hit his opponents with. I even had the idea for a side special to be his race car that he uses during this other animation that he gets. I also had this idea where the victory animation could be him painting his opponent before crossing them out with an X. And another victory animation being him with the other 5 NSYNC Whammies. And of course, one of his third victory animation would be the Irish step dance Whammy, where it would do the little dance animation with 5 other Whammies and then walk towards the screen like so. And of course, the final Smash would be Whamzilla, the ever iconic one that was the first double whammy to be introduced to the entire series. Where it would play a cutscene and then some building parts would follow. I had so many ideas for this guy, it was honestly kind of criminal. And, you know, criminal in the sense that he takes all your money during the game show, and that's about it. I wouldn't actually condone that. And seeing the way that Whammy is as a character is just so wacky and unintuitive, you wouldn't really expect him to be a good fighter, but he is. He's done a lot of things. And I've had this idea where all the special attacks could be the various double whammies that would happen, where essentially the double whammies it doesn't only just take your money, it also embarrasses you in front of a live audience, which honestly is a fate worse than death. So of course I had the side special be the lawnmower, the up special be the one where he walks on his roller skate while carrying a bag of groceries, only to trip on said roller skate and drop all the groceries on your head. And so it'd be kind of a weird. I also had this idea where the up special in the air could be different from the one on the ground. It's just a lot. But I think my most creative idea for this was probably the color palettes. Of course, I'd have to make this the iconic design from the new version of Press Your Luck, the Whammy, the all new Press Your Luck. You know, the one that happened in the mid to early 2000s before we got the reboot that isn't all that great, to be honest. The reboot's not that good. But essentially his ult is also boiled down to this default, followed by a palette swap between the green and red, then the yellow and red would swap, and it would actually have an ult based on Todd Newton, the host of Whammy at the time, as well as one that references Whamzilla, and then there's one that references the classic ults that we see Whammy a classic alt. Basically, the way that Wemmy looked in the early 90s and in the late 90s, early 2000s. Honestly, Wemmy was probably one of my weirdest movesets that I've ever had to come up with, but for some reason it just sort of works in a way, and I really love how it works. And I think that does it for the last character of the row, but we still have 3 other characters to go over. Pokemon Trainer, Kalos. Okay, so getting to the last 3 people to end this series off on, all 3 Pokemon trainers do essentially have the same explanation, but I want to go over each of the movesets individually because, well, all of them actually have different things that they use. So aside from, well, by things I mean Pokemon. So first of all, the Kalos trainer will of course be Calum and Serena, that you can switch between them, and all their colors will be references to the numerous friends and enemies that they meet alongside the story of X and Y. I could probably stick some references to Legend of ZA in there, but X and Y took place 5 years before that, and this is how they looked before then. So I'm not going to be considering it. Aside from that, I actually did have some ideas on what they could use for their team members, and of course they'd have to use the three of the Kalos starters, though which stages of them entirely is the question. So for my own research and sanity, I went ahead and actually did a bit of searching around to see what I would get, and I actually had to take inspiration from Brawl Fan 01 to do this because, well, it was kind of hard to do so otherwise. And from what I can tell, Brawl Fan 01 actually did the rotation of course a basic starter, a middle stage starter, and a final evolution, and he rotated it between the grass, water, and fire starters. So the last thing that I checked, the last one that Brawl Fan 01 did a Smash moveset for was the Unova Pokemon trainer, which had the grass, water, and fire starters be Snivy, Dewott, and Emboar. So I decided that I would actually continue in that sort of rotation, and of course rotate out the Pokemon that they use. So instead of having the grass starter be the basic one, the fire starter will be the basic one, and then the middle starter will be the grass one, and so on and so forth. It would continue in the same pattern until the Galar trainer, which was of course the last moveset that I made. So looking back on it, when I made the moveset, I had to make the fire starter the basic one. So of course the Kalos trainers based Pokemon team would be Fennekin, the fire starter, the grass type middle evolution, Quilladin, and the final evolution of the water starter, Greninja. It just made a lot of sense that way, and I kind of liked how it came out. I did want to do Frogadier, Fennekin, Frogadier, and Chestnut instead, but that would probably ruin the entire rotation. So I'm doing it justice the way I am now. So getting into each of the Pokemon individually, Fennekin would be the lighter of the 3, and of course the easiest to knock out, but would have some pretty interesting attacks. And yes, I know Fennekin was an assist Pokeball back in Smash 4, at least I think it was, until it got replaced by Vulpix. So having it as a fighter instead would be very interesting, as it can use more moves than just the one. Of course, it would have its quick attacks, its Ember, and Flamethrower as well. And as for the up special, I kind of had to dabble a bit. I was thinking it could either be Quick Attack or Flame Charge, and I settled on Flame Charge because it made more sense. And of course, to get it out of the way, all of the Pokemon trainers down specials is Pokemon Switch. It's not a move, it is a move, but it doesn't do any damage. It just switches the Pokemon that you're using, and that's it. Anywho, moving on to the second member, Quilladin. Quilladin would actually be a fairly interesting middleweight character because, well, of course he'd be the awkward middle stage evolution, and the 2 popular Pokemon that everyone would use, probably Fennekin and Greninja. But don't be fooled by Quilladin's normal appearance. If any of you don't know who I'm talking about, you can probably just Google it, but but Quilladin is the evolved form of Chespin and the pre-evolved form of Chesnaught. It's essentially the awkward middle stage before you get to the awesome final stage. And honestly, I kind of liked Quilladin. I thought it was a really cool Pokemon when I first saw it. And when I first played any sort of Gen 6 game that allowed me to get or any Pokemon game that allowed me to get Quilladin, I genuinely enjoyed the little guy. He was kind of cute in a way. But in Smash Brothers, that cuteness is going to be very deceiving because despite being very awkward, Quilladin would actually be heavier than Fennekin, obviously, because it's a middle stage evolution, but of course lighter than Greninja, which would be the third Pokemon they use. Oh wait, this whole time I really hope that I edited the Pokemon in as to show what I mean. So I have the starters going into slideshow mode now. Anyways, I actually did think that this would be a pretty good idea to have for all three of their Pokemon, but then I kind of remembered that Greninja was already a solo fighter in Smash Brothers, and having to put Greninja in a group of three just didn't really feel right since he's already a solo fighter. Well, yes, I do know that multiple people can have the same Pokemon, so essentially, like us players can have different Greninja. I know it's kind of weird, but so I kind of had the idea that instead of Fennekin, Quilladin, and Greninja, I would actually go a completely different direction. So instead, I switched it up to being Fennekin, Frogadier, and of course Chesnaught. And having Chesnaught as a fully evolved playable grass starter just makes a lot more sense, to be honest. So of course, looking at them, Fennekin will be the lightest, Frogadier will be the middleweight, and Chesnaught will be the heaviest and slowest, but the strongest. And having these three color starters as the character's moveset in Smash just makes a lot more sense. It's especially with consistency because, well, we already have a playable fully evolved fire starter, a playable fully evolved water starter. Well, actually, in fact, we have 2 fire starters and 1 water starter. So it makes sense to have a fully evolved grass starter for the third and final member of this trio. And looking back on it, I think this works quite well. Fennekin being a very fast, very light hitting, but a lot of fiery attacks. Frogadier being maybe not as quick as Greninja, but still just as strong, and Chesnaught being the slow, bulky, but still very powerful fighter that it is. And of course, I had this idea where Chesnaught's neutral special would be Spiky Shield, Frogadier would be Water Gun, and of course Fennekin would use Ember. Since those two are the last two are the basic ones, and the first one I mentioned is Chesnaught's signature move. So I had to include it in the moveset in some way. I know I probably could have used Spiky Shield for Chesnaught's shielding animation, but that would be kind of a waste. And of course, the final smash would be a variance of triple finish, but I don't think that would work. Instead, I had this idea where they would return whatever Pokemon that they had and would swap it in for a Mega Lucario for the final smash. Since it would be a nice little reference to that Mega Lucario versus Mega Lucario battle that is completely not optional and you have to do it. But then I started thinking that why don't they just use Xerneas or Yveltal for the final smash instead, or maybe even Zygarde with 1,000 waves? Well, honestly, I don't think that would work thematically with these characters, especially when it came down to just having the Pokemon team itself. And I think these three, alongside the Mega Lucario for a final smash, just makes a lot of sense, to be honest. I do like it. It works. Anyways, moving from one trainer to the next. Pokemon Trainer Alola. Okay, so here's the second Pokemon Trainer that I did a moveset for, and I think I did pretty well when it came to making their moveset because, well, I actually played the Alola games a bit more than the other games like Kalos. So not to like say anything bad or aside, but I really do like all the generations of Pokemon since, well, you guys know me, I'm a Pokemon baby. considering the Alola region, it was actually again pretty easy to make the moveset since I had to just pick 3 of the starter Pokemon from the 3 separate lines. And this one's actually, and considering the last one, this one was actually a lot easier to make. So of course, for the first Pokemon, they would be joined by the Grass starter, Rowlet. The second one will of course be the middle stage for the Fire starter, Torracat, and the third one will of course be the final evolution of the Water starter, Primarina. And looking at it now, this looks a lot cooler now that I actually get to look at the color at the actual character with the 3 Pokemon beside them. And this even continues the rotation that I was doing, to which honestly having the Kalos starters have Greninja as their middle stage just didn't make any sense. I tried switching around for the Kalos starters, having Froakie as the main one and Braixen be the final one, or not Braixen, Delphox, sorry. But it just didn't work, and we didn't really have a Grass starter fully evolved, so I went with Chestnut, Frogadier, and Fennekin, and it just made a lot more sense. But when it came to the Alola trainer, I had a lot more freedom because, again, I actually played their games. So it's only natural that I would understand the movesets a lot better. So to go over each of the stats, Rowlet will of course be the lightest one, but it would have 3 or 4 jumps thanks to those wings of it. And since it is a flying type. Torracat would have 2 jumps and be a middleweight, and Primarina would be a heavyweight with sluggish momentum, but has some pretty strong and powerful moves to back that up. And also, I even went into as far as to their frame data as well, seeing that Rowlet would have slightly better frame data than Primarina, but than Torracat, or I should say than Torracat, and Torracat having better frame data than Primarina. So, and honestly, it works in a lot of fun ways. Because since Rowlet would be mostly an aerial fighter, you can actually rely on it to get some aerial combos off, while relying Torracat on some grounded coverage and a little bit of aerial coverage. And Primarina is just all about ground coverage. You want to be sure your opponent can't get near you if you're playing as Primarina. If you're Torracat, then you want to get up close and personal, and if you're Rowlet, then you want to fight from a distance, but also get up close and personal to do some damage yourself. It's sort of a balancing act when it comes to making movesets like this, and honestly, I think I like the Alola moveset far more than the other ones. So of course I had to look up all their movesets as well, and it was very fun considering I am basically a Pokemon nerd at this point. So Rowlet having the neutral special be Leafage made a lot of sense. Torracat having Fire Fang as a neutral special works, and Primarina's neutral special is of course Sparkling Aria, which is its signature move, and it just makes a lot of sense. Or well, I should say used to be a signature move until they gave it to Lapras for some reason. Anyways, making the moveset for their moveset boils down to how well you can balance everything and just be as chaotic as possible when it comes to it. Because Alola in itself is kind of a pretty chaotic region, considering that Generation 7 introduced the new mechanic, the Z moves, which are basically just big and powerful attacks in the form of a cutscene that does a lot of damage. And of course their Final Smash should be a Z move, but which one? I don't really know which one I could have used. Like, I could have made it so that you could have a different Z move depending on which Pokemon was out at the time. But I thought that'd be a little bit boring. So I decided that for their Final Smash, instead they would call back the Pokemon they have and call upon the power of either Solgaleo or Lunala, depending on the gender costume that you picked. And it just makes more sense this way. Also, I should probably mention that Elio would have Solgaleo, while Celine here has Lunala. And as for their alternate costumes, I actually had a really good idea when it came down to it. So when it comes to their costumes would of course be their defaults would of course Elio and Celine, the way you see them in Sun and Moon. But I thought that the third and fourth alts should actually be the way that they look in the Ultra games. So Ultra Elio and Ultra Celine as well. And of course each of the ones will have their own unique palette swap. So essentially there would be basically be four different characters, despite being the same exact 2 characters, just in different universes. and they would have to have one different alt each. And to top it all off, the final smash should be a Z move that include. Oh wait, no, I already talked about the final smash. Sorry, my brain's going on autopilot today. But I think that does it for Celine and Elio's final smash and their what if move sets. And of course, the victory animation for all the Pokemon trainers just be to have them spending a bit of time with their Pokemon after the battle. Anyways, moving on to the next one, which should actually be the last one for the series. Pokemon Trainer Galar. And here we have the final character of this entire roster. Oh my god, it's about time I got to this one. So of course it has the same explanation as the other two, but of course the only difference being the Pokemon that they use and the trainers that they are. Victor and Gloria, that is their canonical names, are very interesting characters to come up with a Smash moveset for, and there's a lot of possibilities that you can do. But for now, let's just cover the basic starters that they would use in their movesets first of all. So first of all, continuing with my rotation of the Water, Grass, Fire one, the first Pokemon cycle I should say, the first Pokemon that would be the entire party would be the timid water lizard Pokemon Sobble. And it just makes sense because of how my rotation is working. Next would of course be the middle stage grass starter, Thwackey, and then finally would be the fully evolved fire starter, Cinderace. It just sort of makes sense like this because, well, not only does it follow the rotation pattern, but it also works well when it comes to the Galar starters. Sobble and Cinderace are some of those popular ones, while of course Thwackey is the awkward middle stage evolution that still everybody really likes. It's a monkey with drumsticks. What are you gonna do about it? And of course, all their attacks would be the basic moves that they would learn in Pokemon. And yes, the down special is the same for all of them. It's the Pokemon Switch. So when coming up with their movesets, I actually had an idea of having Sobble, of course, have their neutral special be Water Gun. Their up special could also be a Water Gun, but the same way that Squirtle the same way that Greninja uses Hydro Pump, but I thought that'd be a bit too obvious, I guess. So instead, I decided that Sobble's up special could probably be it using Bubble. I know that Sobble probably doesn't actually learn the move Bubble, but it would be pretty funny to see it use that move in some sort of innovative way. Or it could use its tongue, but I don't think it has a long tongue like other lizard Pokemon do, so it gets sort of a pass for that. As for the side special, I don't really know. I think most of the other special attacks for these three Pokemon, I kind of had me stumped, but at the same time, I do really like having the idea of these three having their own signature moves. Thwackey's neutral special will of course be Branch Poke, which is a solid basic move to use, and the other specials could just be other moves that Thwackey can learn, which I don't really remember, but I did have quite a few ideas for Cinderace. Cinderace's neutral special is of course Pyro Ball, which would have a cooldown time that you would need to wait for before using Pyro Ball again, and I had the side special be like I don't know, maybe a way to build a momentum, probably Quick Attack or something, since Scorbunny can learn Quick Attack, and having Cinderace no Quick Attack would make sense for a side special. And I think the up special would probably be Flame Charge as well, similarly to Fennekin's up special, but at least that's what I was thinking beforehand. I mostly when it came to these Pokemon trainers, I had the final smashes in mind before I came up with the movesets. And when it comes to the frame data, Sobble will of course be the second fastest. What, you thought Sobble being the basic starter would be the fastest? He's a shy little lizard. So I decided to make Sobble the second fastest of the three. Thwackey being the well, when it comes to frame data at least. Thwackey is the fastest with the frame data, and Cinderace is the slowest. However, Cinderace does have better movement speed than the other two, and is a little bit heavier, so it's harder to launch it. And as for the final smash, I should probably come out and say that entirely, that the final smash will of course be be Dynamaxing. Why would it not be? Although that would be kind of boring and again kind of a cop out, but it also makes sense with the character, and since Dynamax and Gigantamax were the main gimmick of Sword and Shield. However, I actually did kind of think that they would have the similar final smash to Elio and Celine, where they would call upon their respective legendary to help them out with a big attack. So for Gloria, she would get Zacian, and Zamazenta would go to Victor. It just sort of makes sense that way. Plus when it comes to the color schemes, I think it works better, as well as the fact that Gloria's partner in Pokemon Masters is Zacian. So there's also that. Aside from that, I do really enjoy making movesets for all these characters, and ending off with the Galar Pokemon trainers was kind of a nice way to end off the series. Honestly, I wish I could have done more movesets, but unfortunately, Amino Apps is officially dead, so I can't really go back to make any more. But with that out of the way, that's all the characters. Jeez, it took so long to actually make this series of videos. I'm sorry that these videos are super long and lengthy, but I have to explain these characters in some way, and I really wanted to share what I made with everyone. So first of all, thank you guys so much for watching. Thanks for sticking around for so long with this series. I promise we'll go back to our regular gameplay schedule tomorrow. And I'll see all of you in the next video, so be sure to leave a like, comment what you think, share this video with your friends, and be sure to subscribe and click the bell so you don't miss a single notification. I'll see all of you in the next video. Goodbye. With